All right, we're live on a Wednesday night. It's the Panther-Lair Show. We do this live stream every Wednesday night at 8:30. People are filtering in here. We appreciate that. I feel like we were just live less than 24 hours ago. It's probably around 11:30, maybe a little bit before that we went. It might have been after. It might have been like, I don't remember what time it was. It was a late night. It might have been around 11:30. That we did the live stream last night after the Pitt Mississippi State game. Panthers winning their first NCAA tournament game since the 2014 NCAA tournament. They advanced to the first round, the field of 64, making the tournament for the first time since 2016 with last night's appearance, and then advancing with last night's win. So yeah, it's I think everyone's still recovering a little bit today. I was talking to some Pitt fans who definitely didn't get a lot of sleep last night because that game went a little bthat post-game show went pretty late as well. I forget exactly what time we were up to, but that was a late one. Starting at 9:10 and actually probably started closer to 9:30. Won a couple hours, and then we did the live show after that. But here we are. It's less than 24 hours since the game. Just about, more than 24 hours until Pitt against Iowa State, I should say, on Friday, which should be another good one, another challenge against a really good defensive team. We saw what a good defensive team like Mississippi State could do. I mean, Duke was a good defensive team, but they posed a lot more challenges offensively than Mississippi State does, or Iowa State will. But all really good defensive teams, which can be a problem for an offensive team like Pitt. I mean, Pitt is, a team that is certainly based around offense. They've won games with offense, although I would say last night they gutted out a pretty gritty win. Playing shorthanded, not just with Federico being out, but Jamarius Burton missing a lot of time due to fouls, and so playing shorthanded, playing against a really tough defensive team. It was a pretty good win. I think there was a lot to like about that win. I think you had to like how guys stepped up. You had to like how Nelly Cummings stepped up and took over the game. You had to like how Blake Hinson hit the long three near the end to try to, to extend the lead at that point. You had to like how Greg Elliott made a couple big plays there as part of Pitt's 7-0 run to try and, to extend the lead and ultimately drag it out to 6. And obviously, you had to like how Jamarius Burton made the big jump shot at the end, the game winner. Despite not seeing, his usual share of minutes due to the foul trouble, you had to like how Guillermo Diaz-Graham came up with a block at the end. And Nike Sabandi made big plays too. It was all 6 main guys who played made big plays down the stretch to help Pitt win that game. And I think if you're a Pitt fan, it's hard to find anything to dislike about it. Of course, the comment section already, we've already got RJ Seaman, who's a super chatter, and we appreciate that. Glad you could jump in there. We appreciate seeing you come in with a really hot take here, and we'll just get to it right off the bat because you're a super chatter. Winning essentially a home game against the worst team in the tournament by 1 point seems unworthy of chest pounding. And let me just tell you right off the bat, RJ Seaman 38, if you can't enjoy that game last night, I think you might be in the wrong place. I'm not really sure that you have the same interests as everyone else who might be involved in this this live stream tonight. I'm not sure you have the same interests as everyone else who is maybe tuning in this evening, or everybody else who's a part of it. I just don't think you have the same. You're looking for the same things that everyone else is, because that was a great win. Is Mississippi State number 68? Are they the worst team in the tournament field? I don't think they are. I'm pretty sure they're not. And I'm pretty sure you could find at least a dozen teams that Mississippi State would beat on the regular. I also think it's convenient that you left out the fact that Pitt was, missing Federico last night, so they're down 1 starter, and they have another starter who plays only 19 minutes when he usually averages double that number, but he was missing a lot of time due to fouls. You conveniently left that out when you talk about getting a 1-point win at essentially a home game, which is interesting because it's 4 hours away. That's saying that they could play a game in Scranton and that would be a home game. Or Buffalo. If Pitt played this game in Buffalo, it would be essentially a home game. Yes, it's closer to Pittsburgh than it is to Starkville, but I don't think we exactly call it a home game. If you can't enjoy that win, I don't know. We got the one guy who didn't enjoy the win is chiming in on the chat. That's amazing to have that right here. So I don't know. But thanks for being a super chatter, though. We appreciate it. Michael B says, Chris, what a win, huh? Still can't believe the 3 by Blake was even attempted, let alone go in. So my question is, if Fetty can't go again on Friday, do you still think we can beat Iowa State? I think we lose this time without Federico. I mean, a couple things there. I mean, with Blake Hinson, I really think you... I think we have to be past the point of being surprised when Blake Hinson takes and makes some of these ridiculous shots that he takes and makes, right? I mean, I think we have to be past the point of gasping when he pulls up from deep or pulls up from the logo and being even, we have to be past the point of being shocked when the ball goes in. I mean, he's done it all season long. This is what he does. And Jeff Capel's had a lot of great comments about it over the course of the season, talking about how he's learned that he has to accept a bad shot from Blake Hinson because he can make those shots. And you could even see, if you watch the video, there's a great video. I retweeted it. Just the game footage, the broadcast footage of when Hinson makes that shot. And you can see Jeff Capel in the background is just kind of throw his hands up. Not when he put the shot up, but when the shot went down. Just kind of threw his hands up like, this guy, this Hinson guy is ridiculous with the shots that he makes. And he's right. I mean, he's ridiculous with the shots he attempts. And he might be even more ridiculous with the shots that he makes. But that served him all season. And he's been Pitt's leading scorer 15 times. And, either the leading scorer or tied for the leading scorer in 15 games this season. He's been Pitt's leading scorer all year long. And it's because he makes those ridiculous outside shots. And if they beat Iowa State on Friday, it's going to have a lot to do with making those shots. As far as Iowa State, and I think we'll talk about them a lot tonight, I haven't looked into them quite as much as, we looked into Mississippi State heading into that game. But I think, the first thing that jumps out is that when you look at Iowa State, they're not like Mississippi State in that Mississippi State had the big man who was the big shooter or the big scoring threat, the guy who was going to do a lot of damage, the guy you had to focus on. Iowa State's more driven by guards, Jaron Holmes and Gabe Kalsher. Those are the only two guys who average more than 10 points per game. They're both guards. 34.5% three-point shooter and a 36.4% three-point shooter. Kalsher has made 72. Holmes has made 41 threes so far this season. Caleb Grill was the guy who I think was their leader in three-point shooting, but he's not on the team anymore, so you've taken that threat out. This is really about defense. And Federico is going to be a big part of that, is rim protection and grabbing rebounds and offensive rebounds. But it's really going to be about defense and how Pitt's able to attack Iowa State's defense. They ran into a really tough defensive team on Tuesday night in Mississippi State, and yeah, they only got past them by 1. They only scored 60, but they did it with with Jamarius Burton playing 19 minutes, and I don't think that fact can be overlooked. There's a lot of things that went into that game, a lot of things that went into the outcome of the game and how the game progressed. But the fact that Burton only played 19 minutes, I think, is huge. I think if he plays something closer to his regular 36, 37, 38 minutes, I think they score more than 60 points. I think he's able to help break that defense down and loosen it up and, either create more points himself with his own scoring or create opportunities to find open shooters on the outside. They really worked hard. Mississippi State worked really hard to shut down Greg Elliott and keep him, particularly in the second half, keep him off the board as a three-point shooter, and they did a great job on Hinson as well. I think if you have Burton out there more, you're probably going to be able to generate more of those opportunities. And if teams don't want to sag in on him when he drives, if they don't want to try and collapse to stop him from driving, then he's going to have an easier opportunity to get to the lane. So, I don't think you can overlook the impact that had. But it was a good defensive team. You know what I mean? And that's what they're going to have again with Iowa State. And so this isn't going to be a team where this isn't going to be a game where it's going to be easy to just go throw down and throw up points. Go down and throw up points all game. This is probably not going to be a 75-72 game or something like that, or 78-74 game. This is probably going to be, another one that's played in the 60s. I would have to guess. I was just looking at Iowa State, just kind of some stats. We have them up here. Iowa State averages 68 points per game scoring, and they average defensively allowing 62.8 points per game. Now, that's kind of skewed, of course. I mean, you get into the non-conference games and things like that, and I think that kind of affects the stats. I mean, just kind of glancing through here, they played. They scored 88 against IUPUI. They scored 80 against North Carolina A&T. Let's see if they got other ones. They were one of North Carolina's early losses that made everyone wonder, hey, I wonder if North Carolina is actually good or not. They scored 77 against McNeese. They scored 77 against Baylor. And so this is what's a little bit concerning. You have a team like Baylor. Iowa State beat them twice. Scored, beat them 77-62 in Ames, and then where's that other game here? They played them in Waco and beat them 73-58. Really kind of shut them down. They actually beat them 3 times because they beat them in the Big 12 championship or Big 12 tournament 78-72. So, that is probably one of the things, as I was doing some reading earlier today, that's one of the things that's concerning about this Iowa State team is, they did a good job against some of the better teams in the Big 12. And while their record, they didn't win 20 games, Pitt has the better record, just more in terms of more wins. You could say that Iowa State is probably a little more battle tested for playing in the Big 12. They were able to beat some of the top teams in the Big 12, like Baylor. And really, I mean, I guess if you want to take it to a certain extent, you could say that this game is going to provide an interesting sort of comparison of the Big 12 and the ACC. For all we heard about the Big 12 this year and all we heard about the ACC this year, you've got a game now that is going to be really interesting to watch as a comparison to the two tournaments or the two conferences, because you've got the number 5 team in each league. Iowa State finished, they went 9-9 in conference. TCU also went 9-9 in conference. Iowa State was 5th. And Pitt obviously had the number 5 seed in the ACC tournament. And so you end up with this, it's going to stand as an interesting comparison between these two conferences. And if Pitt's able to come out and win this game and maybe even win it convincingly, and I don't know if they'll do it convincingly, I think they could still win, but I don't know if they'll do it convincingly. But if they were able to do that, that would say a whole lot about the Big 12 and about the ACC. After we've heard all season about how good the Big 12 is, and the West Virginia kid said that, West Virginia could just run through the ACC and all that stuff. I mean, we heard that all season. We heard the ACC stinks, and we heard the Big 12 is great. Well, if the number 5 teams in each league face each other, it's going to provide an interesting comparison, for where those conferences really were. And that's not going to tell the whole story of the conference, but it'll provide an interesting comparison for it, I would say. So I think you got a lot kind of going on there, and I think Iowa State's getting a lot of respect simply for the fact that they were in the Big 12. And they had good wins in the Big 12. There's no question about it, and they ended up with a net of like 20, although I don't really care about any of that stuff anymore. The net is about as irrelevant to me as it can be. But I think Iowa State gets a lot of credit for being in the Big 12. I think playing in that conference and getting some of the wins they got in that conference boosted the reputation of Iowa State. Maybe rightly, maybe wrongly. I don't know. This is a team that went to the Sweet 16 last year. I think I read they've been in the Sweet 16 3 out of the last 6 years. They returned a number of guys who played on that Sweet 16 team last year. I mean, this is a team that, they're not chumps. This is not going to be an easy game by any stretch of the imagination. And Pitt's the underdog here. I think the last I saw they were, plus 3.5. It might be more by now, but they're their number 11 going against the number 6 seed, which is going to be a challenge, right? I mean, it's not going to be easy, but Tuesday night wasn't easy. No reason to think Friday will be either, but also no reason to think they can't come out and win this game. I'm going to get back over the comments and questions here, see what people are saying. Pittsburgh Sports All the Time says, so what's the scouting report on Iowa State? I hope they're not a very physical team. Guillermo Diaz-Graham, if he plays, probably can't withstand that for another game. I mean, I think they are going to be physical. I mean, I think a defensive team like this is not going to be one that just sits back and plays finesse basketball. I think playing tough defense and, playing with physicality goes hand in hand. That's all part of it. And, I mean, that's who they're going to be, and they're going to bang. And it seems like there's a chance, a decent chance, a better than even chance that Federico could be back for this game. I don't know what the chances are. I'm not in Greensboro. Our guy Jim Hammond's going to head down there and check it out and see what he can dig up heading into the game on Friday. But I don't know if they'll announce anything beforehand. I'm sure Jeff Capel will be asked tomorrow. He's got a press conference in Greensboro tomorrow. I think there's an open practice and an open locker room. So, questions will be asked. There'll be some answers given, whether they're honest or not, or whether they're completely forthcoming. I don't know. It's often not the case. But I wouldn't be surprised. Like, if I had to bet today, I guess I would bet that Federico will probably play. But, I mean, I think we're still going to see a lot of Guillermo Diaz-Graham. Always the possibility of somebody getting hurt in a game or foul trouble or something like that. And also, just if Federico is nursing a knee injury, even if he's able to play, he might not be 100%. He might not be ready to play 35 minutes. I think you're still going to get minutes out of Guillermo Diaz-Graham. Ultimately, I mean, I think this game is going to come down to Nike Sibandi, Jamarius Burton, Nelly Cummings, Blake Hinson. You hope you can get something out of Greg Elliott. You hope you can get a couple threes out of Greg Elliott, because he really hasn't, outside of the Georgia Tech game in the ACC tournament, he hasn't had a great shooting game in a while. And so you hope you can get some kind of positive impact out of Greg Elliott. But you're going to need Nelly Cummings to take over this game again. You're going to need Jamarius Burton to take over this game again. You're going to need Blake Hinson to drain the threes. He's going to have to do his thing. And I think when you're playing against a tough defensive team like this, I think you have to, attack it with numbers and just fire shots. They're an okay 3-point defensive team. They're not great. And they're not a big 3-point shooting team either. But I think you can, run things to get guys open. And if it means using Nelly Cummings driving into the lane and Jamarius Burton driving into the lane and Nike Sibandi driving into the lane and then kicking out, do that. But you've got to, I think you're going to have to win this game from outside. And Iowa State's going to know that too. Iowa State's going to work to take those shots away, in which case you're going to have to turn to those guards and let them make plays inside and hope they can make plays inside with the drives. But it's going to be another tough defensive game. And we'll see how this team feels come out of the Mississippi State game and if they're up to the task again after playing a game like that. Let's see. Scrolling through here, the comments. You guys just having back and forth with each other. Let's see here. Bram Janvrin, I apologize if I got that wrong, Bram, says Iowa State had a winning record against the top 6 teams and a losing record against the bottom 4 teams. And, well, I mean, this is one of these cases where they were 19-13, right? And they went 9-9 in the Big 12. Going 19-13, I think they had a swoon, right? I think they had a swoon like Mississippi State did, where, let me see if we can find where it happened here, where they lost like a bunch in a row. Yeah, kind of into, when was this? Like mid to late February. They lost to Kansas State. They lost to Texas, Oklahoma, West Virginia. That was, 4 in a row right there? Before they finished with a win over Baylor in the finale. And even before that, they lost West Virginia and Oklahoma State, and then they beat TCU and then went on a 4-game losing streak. They really didn't string wins together much throughout January or February. They just they stumbled a lot. They had 3 wins to open January, and then it was really just loss, win, loss, win, loss, loss, win, loss, loss, win, loss, 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 win. And so, they did not necessarily finish the season strong, despite finishing the regular season with a win over Baylor and then beating Baylor again in the Big 12 tournament. But they didn't necessarily finish the regular season all that strong outside of that Baylor game. They're kind of slumping heading into that, and they, I think, kicked a guy off the team or removed a guy off the team who was one of their better shooters, and so they took some of their firepower away. This feels like it's going to be another game that goes back and forth, another game that's really close the whole way. It feels like another game that's probably going to be, a bit of a slugfest and an outlast type of game. I mean, can you, we keep talking about Chris Jans, the Mississippi State coach, saying that Pitt will break. Pitt's going to break, and they just never broke. This might be another game where Pitt has to prove that they just won't break, that they'll keep battling, they'll keep coming back, and keep working it to stay in this one. But it's going to be a battle, and I think there are even people in the Big 12 who don't think that Iowa State is necessarily all that great. So the opportunity's there. 11s beat 6s, and first 4 teams that emerge from the first 4 end up getting wins fairly often. So there's an opportunity there. This team just has to know they have to not get frustrated when they run into the tough defense. They have to know who they are, what they do well, what they want to do. They have to have a good plan, and they have to rely on their senior guards. I think that's what it's really going to come down to. It's Burton, it's Cummings, it's Savandy, with Hinson getting involved largely with those 3 guys getting him the ball, and probably the same thing for Elliott. But it's going to flow out of Cummings, Burton, Savandy. See what else you guys are talking about. General So's Chicken says, hoping that Pitt put more effort into team rebounding. It seems like as soon as Pitt shoots the ball, some players are already making their way down the court, leaving it to just the big man. I think they work on rebounding as much as they can. I think a lot of times when you see guys going back down the court, it's often off those long shots where, 3-point shots, when they go off the rim, they go off the backboard, they can create a long rebound, and long rebounds can be that first pass in a breakout. And so I think they want to try and get back in transition like that. And to some extent, I almost wonder, and Jeff Capel's never said this, but I almost wonder, given how Pitt really doesn't rebound very well, I almost wonder if Jeff Capel looks at it and says, okay, guys, you shoot, we got to get back. We want to gang rebound as much as we can. If you're near the basket, you got to gang rebound. But the reality is we're not winning most rebounding battles. And so in order to avoid giving up quick transition buckets off of defensive rebounds, we need guys to get back and defend and slow it down so we can get into the half-court defense. I wouldn't be surprised if Jeff Capel says that or something along those lines. Not telling his team to give up on rebounding, but to say, look, we're going to get beat on the boards a lot. And so we need to make sure that doesn't turn into transition defense, fast break points, not transition defense. We need to make sure that doesn't turn into fast break points and transition offense. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the approach. And it's probably not the worst idea, given that, again, they're not great. They're not a great rebounding team. For a variety of reasons, they're not a great rebounding team. Part of it is that Federico and the Twins just don't have the size and the strength to pull it off. I mean, size in terms of thickness and weight, and primarily strength. Part of it is that Blake Hinson's not really a factor. He's got decent rebounding numbers, but I just don't ever look at him and watch him play and think he's a good rebounder, right? I think he's averaging like 6 a game or something like that. He's got a decent rebounding average, but he's just not, like, you watch him play and he never jumps out as being a good rebounder. It just doesn't line up. For whatever reason. And so you need more out of that position. You need the power forward to be rebounding more. You need your 4 to rebound more, and they don't get a ton there. And the guards, I think, can be decent rebounding guards. I think Jamarius Burton can be a decent rebounder. Greg Elliott has done it every now and then. Nelly Cummings is tough. He's just short. Nike Sabandi's athletic, but he doesn't seem to really be able to get the position or fight his way in for the rebound. So you just have this combination of a team that's just not really built to rebound all that well. And quite frankly, without spending too much time talking about him, that's probably where John Hughley would help this team the most, is in rebounding. Both on the defensive end, to cut down on all those offensive rebounds they've been giving up all season, and on the offensive end, to try and get a few extra second chance points and putbacks and things like that. And they've been missing it. And I think they've been missing it all season, and it's cost them. But it's also something that they've sort of learned about themselves, and I think they have to play around it. I think they've tried to play around it and kind of make up for it in other ways. You look at that game on Tuesday night, last night. They knew they weren't a great... They know they're not a great defensive team. I think they know this. But they knew they had to find a way to try to defend Tolu Smith. And so they just put everybody on him. When he touched the ball, it was just... everybody. It was what teams used to do against John Hughley last year. Quite frankly, it was something similar to that, because there was no real threat from outside. There was nobody you were really worried about shooting threes or even making pull-up jumpers or anybody he would kick it out to. You weren't concerned about those guys. You had one guy who could beat you, one guy you wanted to stop. And so that's what they did. They focused on that, just like teams focused on Hughley last year. And so, I don't know if... Iowa State doesn't have that big guy like that. They've got some guards who can score. And so those are the guys that Pitt's going to have to watch out for. And, Jamarius Burton's going to have his work cut out for him. And Nelly Cummings and Nike Sabandi, they're going to have their work cut out for them guarding these two guards from Iowa State. That's going to be the challenge. It's going to be more of those sort of one-on-one matchups than it was, the ball went in low, three guys need to crash in there and triple team Tolu Smith. It's a different kind of challenge in that regard. Let's see. Scrolling in. Extra Fancy Long Grain says Blake Hinson goes 8 of 12 from 3. If Blake Hinson goes 8 of 12 from 3 in this game, Pitt's going to have a great chance to win, I think. I really do. Because, if Blake Hinson goes 8 of 12 from 3, he'll probably have a few free throws. He's going to be, borderline 26, 27, 28 points. And if that happens, I think Pitt's going to win. I really think the score could look... I think the box score could look like last night, where no Pitt player has more than 15 points. But if Blake Hinson makes 8 threes, I feel pretty good about their chances. Bram says Iowa State plays a very physical style. Iowa State beat Baylor on the glass 44-17 with 20 offensive rebounds. That's a big concern. Rebounding has been like I just said a little bit ago. Rebounding is the biggest problem, or one of the biggest problems all season long. And I forget when we talked about it. Maybe on the post-game show last night, maybe one of the morning pits, maybe one of the live streams last week. I lose track. I talk to you guys so often, I lose track. But when people talk about getting better at rebounding, and somebody might have asked a question like that, or we talked about it in some way, I just don't... I think at this point, when you're 34 games into the season, you know who you are. And there's not a whole lot you can do to improve. You know what I mean? Like rebounding, you pretty much are who you are until you get into the offseason. You can improve strength, and you can bring in new guys on the roster, and you can try, do different things. Right now, you are who you are. You're not going to get that much bigger. You're not going to get that much stronger, and you're not going to really change the personnel all that much on your roster. So if you're like Pitt right now and you're not a great rebounding team, and you haven't been a great rebounding team all season, I don't think that's really going to change. So if you go to a game like last night, or a game like Friday where you're playing a good defensive team, and particularly a team that rebounds well, you probably know you're going to lose on the glass. I don't think it's a surprise that Pitt got beat by 20 rebounds last night, and gave up a bunch of offensive rebounds. I think one of the keys is they gave up all those offensive rebounds to Mississippi State. Let me bring up the box score. They gave up 18 offensive rebounds, but only 13 second chance points. That to me is a huge, huge number because I mean we've seen Pitt games where the second chance points end up being like 25, right? That was the Miami game, and then they scored 25 second chance points. If you give up 18 offensive rebounds, you are really it seems likely to me you're going to give up about 20 second chance points. They defended really well after the offensive rebound last night. Mississippi State was not a great offensive team, so that helped. But Iowa State's not a great offensive team, so that helps there as well. Whereas like a Duke or Miami, when they get all those offensive rebounds, they're able to convert them and turn them into second chance points. Even North Carolina to some extent. Those teams could convert the offensive rebounds and score out of offensive rebounds. Mississippi State really couldn't. They didn't. And I'm not sure how Iowa State's going to do in that regard either because, like Mississippi State, they're not a great offensive team. And so if you struggle to score, even the easy ones can be a challenge sometimes. And when you get those offensive rebounds, you should have opportunities for easy ones, but it can be tough when you, if you're not a good offensive team. So I think that is probably, if I was going to pick a focus for Jeff Capel, I'd probably talk about rebounding and positioning, which guys to watch out for. But I'd really emphasize what to do after the other team gets an offensive rebound. Heading into this game against Iowa State, I would want to make sure that, extended possession defense was on point and they knew what to do and they knew how to carry it. Because I think that was key last night. I think they defended well on the second possession and they're going to have to do it again on Friday. Get back into the chat here. Will says, gutsy win last night, but Pitt looks like a team with tired legs the last few weeks. Lack of depth is catching up to them. Gonna need Federico back to have a shot at the W. Yeah, I mean, I think they are wearing down a little bit. I think that's true. I think that I think that game last night was really physical, and they played with an even shorter bench than usual. They played 6 guys. I'm not counting Jorge Diaz-Graham's 4 minutes. They played 6 guys, which is an even shorter bench than they typically use. Usually they'll go at least 7 plus Jorge, and occasionally, somebody like Nate Santos. And when I say somebody like Nate Santos, I mean Nate Santos. But typically they would have Cummings, Burton, Elliott, Sabandi, Hinson, Federico, Guillermo, and that would be at least a 7-man lineup. You know what I mean? A 7-man rotation, so you could get a little bit more rest. Last night they played 6. I mean, effectively, they played 6. And they played 6 in a very physical game. So I do think there are probably some concerns to be had about legs and freshness. And part of this is out of their control. They have the guys they have. If Will Jeffers was available, he could be out there. He could be defending. If nothing else, I think he would help this defense improve quite a bit. We spend all our time talking about John Hughley and Dior Johnson, but Will Jeffers, I think, could actually help this defense. I still remember last year, I think it was, when I asked Jeff Capel, I said, Will Jeffers, when he's reached his potential, what is his game? What is he good at? And he said ideally he would be like a 3-and-D guy, a guy who could help, shoot outside, knock down threes, and then, but mostly, be a great defender and get back on defense and oftentimes take on the best offensive player in the opponent's squad. And so I think they're missing that. I think that would help. If you had Will Jeffers in this group, you could go 8 deep, and he could be your backup 4 instead of Jorge Diaz-Graham. He could play the 4 or the 3. And kind of fit in there and give you more, I think, give you more options on the kind of lineups you want to put out there and the effectiveness of those lineups. Obviously, Hughley is a big loss. Obviously, Dior Johnson would have helped this year. So, that's 3 guys who I think make this team look drastically different if they're available to play, but they weren't. And then you go into last night's game, and it's even worse because Federico wasn't available to play. And then it gets compounded by Jamari Burton being in foul trouble. It was an incredibly difficult situation last night and an incredibly gutsy win for Pitt to pull out. Let's see. Pittsburgh Sports All the Time says, I feel that back and forth basketball is called March Madness basketball. Look, I mean, I think we saw even the game before, right? The was it the A&M Corpus Christi game in Southeast Missouri State or Southeast Missouri? That game was back and forth in an exciting game. Just like the Pitt Mississippi State game. And it reminded us all. I actually walked outside today and I saw my neighbor and he was like, dude, that game last night. He's a casual Pitt fan, tends to keep up on most Pittsburgh sports. Steelers, Penguins, Pirates, Panthers. And he was like, that game last night, it was crazy. That made me want to watch basketball again. I said, yeah, man, that's March. That's what's great about this month. That's what's great about March Madness. That's what they call it, March Madness, because it's wild and it's exciting and you get a lot of fun games. Speaking of that, I mean, I can't wait till tomorrow. 2 games of 30, 2 days of 16 games each. It's such a great sports, it's a great time of the sports calendar. I mean, arguably the best 2-day stretch that you're going to have in the sports calendar, I would say. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to it. So, and not to mention the fact that Pitt's part of it, right? I mean, we can't ignore the significance of that. It's funny as I'm going through and filling out a bracket, I'm remembering how challenging it is to decide how far you take Pitt. Do you take them to beat Iowa State? Do you take them to beat Xavier? You're going to put them in the Sweet 16. Are you hoping for that Pitt-Penn State matchup in the Sweet 16? Oh, God, that would be amazing. But I don't think that's going to happen. For the record, I took them to beat Iowa State and lose to Xavier. So that's my pick. I'm on the record with that. We'll see. We'll see what ends up coming to fruition. Some more comments and questions here. People still rolling in there with thoughts on the game last night and the matchup tomorrow. I do want to tell you about Chris Gates. I haven't. I tell you about Chris Gates every Wednesday because this Wednesday live show is sponsored by Chris Gates Fitness. And you probably already know about Chris, but in case you're new, Chris is an online fitness coach from Pittsburgh, and he works with people all over the world to create customized fitness and nutrition programs that work. He's also a huge Pitt fan, and he loves supporting the Wednesday live show every week. Now, in addition to coaching, Chris pumps out brand new content every week about different topics related to exercise, diet, and how you can make sense of everything. And whether it's written articles or new podcast episodes, videos, anything else, Chris's mailing list is the place to be. He'll let you know everything he's got going on that week. You can go to his website, chrisgatesfitness.com, and then you can sign up for the newsletter and you get it all sent right to your email inbox. And he actually emails his subscribers once a week with all the new content he has to share. You won't get spammed or sold anything. You'll just get super helpful information delivered right to your inbox. So if you go to chrisgatesfitness.com/newsletter, you can sign up for the newsletter. I get it sent to my email once a week. I always check it out. And everybody who subscribes gets a free 21-day training and nutrition program for signing up. So chrisgatesfitness.com. Huge Pitt fan. Trying to do some good out there, help people with their lifestyle, their nutrition, their fitness. Chris Gates, Gates, fitness.com. Go to chrisgatesfitness.com/newsletter, and you could sign up right there. So thanks to Chris for supporting the podcast. He's a big Pitt fan. I know he loves listening, and we really appreciate him reaching out to Pitt fans, giving you an opportunity to find out what he's doing. Let's see here. General So's Chicken says Pitt's game is mid-range. The jump shots and threes driving the basketball should be a last resort unless you're dumping it off to one of the big guys. Well, I mean, I think we're ultimately saying something sort of similar when we talk about what Pitt needs to do and what Pitt does well. Ultimately, what it all comes down to is it's got to run through Cummings, Burton, and Sabandi. Those guys, and they have to use sort of their veteran, presence of mind. And they have to, use their experience, and they have to use their awareness of the court and their vision. That when they drive in, they've got to be able to see what's happening. If a defender is stepping up to try and take a charge, they've got to recognize that somebody's going to be open. If the defender sags off and they've got a chance to pull up for the mid-range shooter, the mid-range jumper, then you take that shot. If you've got an open path to the lane, you've got to get there. If you think you can win that foot race to the hoop, you've got to go. And if you're going and you start to see it closing up, you've got to know where your guys are to kick it out to them. I do think they need to fire away from three. I mean, I think that if they have the opportunity, if they've got the space, and you need the quick triggers with Hinson and Elliott and Cummings and Sabani for that matter, but you need the quick triggers, particularly from Hinson and Elliott, because they'll close out quick. I think Iowa State's going to play really tough defense and really try to guard the 3-point line because they know that's a big way they can get beat. And so Hinson and Elliott are going to have to be ready to shoot at all times. But it's all going to flow through Burton, Cummings, and Sabani. Those are the guys who are going to, and whether it's them making shots or them kicking out or them drawing fouls and going to the free throw line, they're going to be the guys who ultimately make this happen, I think, on Friday. Let's see. Wait, I thought I saw something. One or two. Bram says turnovers plus the rebounding margin will be the key if Iowa State wins both of these. This is how Iowa State plays winning basketball. One thing I will say about last night's game, Mississippi State was pretty good at forcing turnovers. Pitt only had 7. And then only 2 in the first half. I think that was a huge stat for Pitt. Mississippi State ended up getting 10 points off of those 7 turnovers, but keeping it under 10 turnovers. Jamie Dixon used to shoot for 12. I think Pitt should probably shoot for 10. Mississippi State was really good at forcing turnovers, but Pitt did a great job taking care of the basketball, and they're gonna have to do that again on Friday. I think you're right. When you play a tough defensive team like this, possessions are at a premium. You've got to make sure you don't give any away because you were careless, because you made a bad pass, or you lost the ball, or you traveled, or something like that. You've got to take care of the basketball in a big way. I don't think they're going to win the rebounding battle. I think the rebounding margin is going to favor Iowa State. I think that's going to be the case in every game Pitt plays from here on out. It's been the case in almost every game they played so far this season. They're going to get out rebounded. It's a question of by how much, but more importantly, what happens with those rebounds. If Iowa State's able to grab a lot of offensive rebounds, do they get second chance points out of the extended possessions? Again, like I said, Pitt did a good job with Mississippi State on that front. They didn't give up a lot of second chance points on extended possessions. They were able to, yes, they gave up a lot of offensive rebounds, but they did a good job in not letting them turn into points as often as it did in the Miami game, Duke game, etc. So if this is what happens on Friday, if Iowa State goes out and wins the rebounding battle, if they're able to get a lot of offensive rebounds, Pitt's sort of, second possession defense, I forget what they call it. There's a word for it, I'm sure. But Pitt's defense in those situations is going to be the real key. Maybe even more than the offensive rebounds, because they're going to give those up. Those Iowa State's going to win in that department. It's what Pitt does after Iowa State gets the offensive rebound that I think will ultimately determine the game. And then, they have to protect the ball. I think there's no question about that. Let's see. Will Z says, Chris, I know this is primarily a basketball show tonight, but a quick football question. Who do you see Coach Cignetti making the key player in the fall? Give Rod the Izzy treatment, or make Mumpfield or El Barto the star? Thanks. Football is definitely on my mind too. Spring practice started yesterday, first practice of the spring. They'll have another practice again tomorrow. And I have a couple thoughts on that. I think even with Phil Dracovic, Frank Cignetti's still going to try and emphasize the run. He's still going to establish the run game. I thought last year that wouldn't be the case. Like, if you asked me last year at this time, what's their offense going to look like, I would say they're still going to throw it a lot. They're still going to pass a lot. They're going to emphasize the passing game. They're going to throw to Jordan Addison. But I think the shift was already in motion at that point. As far as shifting to more of a run-heavy offense. And I think that's what's going to be again here this season. Now, you can win with a run-heavy offense. You've just got to have an effective passing game to complement it. And that's what Pitt really didn't have last year. They were able to run the ball, but there was no passing game to complement it. I just don't think you can do one well. You can do one really well, but you've got to be able to do the other one pretty well. And that's what they didn't have last year. So, I mean, I think, to your question of who's going to be the emphasis, I mean, I think Rodney Hammond's going to be the guy. I actually had a prediction last August in one of the 3-2-1 columns before the season started, maybe the last one before the season started. Our 3-2-1 columns on Panther-Lair.com, 3 things we know, 2 questions, 1 prediction. And my prediction was Pitt's going to have the ACC's leading rusher 2 years in a row. This is what I wrote last August. I said it's going to be Israel Abanikanda this year, being 2022, and it'll be Rodney Hammond next year, being 2023. Now, there's a lot built into that prediction. I had to get it right. I had to get 2 statistical things right. And then also, Izzy Abanikanda leaving for the NFL, which, I mean, I didn't exactly go out on a limb. I think most people expected that to happen, even back to last August. That was the expectation. But I've gotten 2 out of the 3 key components there correct. That I got Abanikanda as the ACC's leading rusher and leaving after last season. Now I got to get it right on Rodney Hammond. I think he's good enough to be the leading rusher in the ACC. I think he's good enough to be the focal point of the offense. I really do. I think he can be good, and I don't think he has had injuries. I don't think it's anything drastic or beyond the pale or the norm for a running back. Running backs get banged up. I'm not going to call a guy injury prone. If you watch the injury he had against West Virginia, where his ankle twisted his foot was pointing in the wrong direction. I'm not going to call a guy injury prone because he missed a few games after that, injury. That's that's not about being fragile or brittle or, injury prone. That's about you were running and got tackled in a weird way and your foot pointed in the wrong direction. That's what that is. So I'm not inclined to think that Rodney Hammond is, like I say, injury prone any more than Israel Abanikanda was. And so I think he is up to the task of a full workload. And I think if he gets it, he's going to put up big numbers. So that's still the focal point. That said, one of the biggest question marks this spring and one of the biggest points of emphasis is finding the receivers who will step up, to go alongside Konate Mumfield. They have 2 guys back, basically. 2 contributing receivers returning. Konate Mumfield and Bub Means. I mean, that's it. I was watching practice yesterday, and it just struck me. I'm watching him saying, well, this is all they have. This is it. The number 3 guy behind those 2 is Dejon Reynolds, transfer from Florida. Number 4 behind him, I don't know, Lamar Seymour, a freshman? Israel Polk, a freshman? One of these guys who's never played, like Addison Copeland or Chewabuko or Miles Alston. I know Alston's played a little bit, but, effectively not at all. And I'm saying this is the receiving core. I'm almost kind of shocked. And there have been different things that have happened over the years. Guys have, obviously there have been transfers and some guys just kind of didn't pan out. But to get to this point, to be in 2023 and your top 3 receivers are all transfers is a pretty big indictment on your recruiting. And I think it sheds some light on why they took 4 wide receivers in this class, in this 2023 recruiting class, with Lamar Seymour and Israel Polk and Kenny Johnson and Zion Fowler. And I think it's a good class. I think they have some good players in there. I think Seymour can be really good. I'm a little more bullish on Polk than I was when he signed as a recruit. And I think Kenny Johnson's going to be a good player too. I'll see what Zion Fowler can do, but he's certainly a good athlete. So I think they signed a good class of receivers. They need a couple of those guys to pan out because some of them are going to be needed this year. Just by the numbers, they're going to need some of those freshmen, I think, to get on the field in 2023. And then they're going to need at least 2 of those 4, if not 3, to be good so they can take over for the position in the next few years. I don't know what's happened to wide receiver recruiting. And I mean, we've talked about it a lot on Panther-Lair.com. I feel like I've written about it a bunch of different times, going back and look at the recruiting classes and things like that. And a bunch of guys just didn't pan out, and guys end up transferring or just not playing. Shockey, Thought he would be really good. Shockey Jacques-Louis. Didn't work out. He's at Akron. He had a great season at Akron. Cameron O'Neal. Didn't work out. Darian Street. Didn't work out. Jalen Barden. Didn't work out. Jaden Bradley. Transfers midseason. Will Gibson. Never panned out. And then Jared Wayne leaves early. Jordan Addison transfers. And you're stuck. You have Mumfield and Means and Reynolds as basically your top 3 guys. So I don't even know. I mean, kind of coming back to your question, Will Z, I don't even know if I don't even know if you could make one of those guys the emphasis of your passing game right now, or the emphasis of your offense. One of them is going to have to be the emphasis of the passing game, but I don't think you can make any of them the emphasis of your offense right now. They're going to have to be a run-heavy team because the receivers just have a lot of question marks and don't necessarily look like they're going to be very good. I shouldn't say don't look like they're going to be very good. I'm still on the Konate Mumfield bandwagon. I still think he can be really good. I do think he can be a good player for this team and a leading receiver for this team. But there's nobody that jumps off the page. You say, oh man, this guy, this is that stud, number 1 wide receiver. Now, maybe somebody will emerge as the season goes on, but not yet. Not right now. Let's see here. Get a few more questions in before we take off for the day. For the night, I should say. A lot of the same people chiming in. Scrolling down, trying to get as many good questions here as possible. Oh yeah, I guess I am mispronouncing Xavier. I'm calling it Xavier because I'm so used to Xavier Johnson. Somebody pointed that out that I keep saying Xavier, but Xavier is the right. Rob List says not enough dribble penetration is my biggest concern. Do you mean not enough attempted by Pitt, or not enough that's going to be allowed by Iowa State's defense? I'm not sure which way you're leaning on that, but I think that's kind of what I was saying, that they're going to have to be led by Cummings, Burton, Sabandi. Like, these guys are going to have to make the plays, and a big part of it's going to come from driving inside the arc, and then being heady enough and smart enough and aware enough to kind of see what's happening and react to it. When you drive in, you've got a couple options. You can keep marching all the way to the basket. You can pull up for a mid-range. You can kick. You can drive further and kick. You've got different, at least 4 options there that you have to be able to consider. You have to process that information to make a quick decision. Jamarius Burton, Nelly Cummings, I think are good at doing that. I think Nike Sabandi's pretty good. Maybe not as good as those two, but Nike Sabandi's pretty good at doing it too. I think that's what they're going to have to build their offense largely off of on Friday. Is being led by those 2 guards. Now, I do think last night's game looks different if Jamarius Burton plays the whole time. I really do. I think if Jamarius Burton is out there for a regular share of minutes, I think he makes a positive impact, and maybe that game doesn't come down to the final, desperation. That was way too close, wide open 3 and putback attempt. Maybe they have a bigger cushion than just 1 point heading into the final seconds. Because Burton should be able to make more plays like the play he made to win the game. So if they're able to keep Burton, if Burton's able to stay, I shouldn't say if they're able to keep, if Burton's able to stay out of foul trouble on Friday, that's going to go a long, long way in helping this team's cause. Now, you also need Nelly Cummings not to get into foul trouble, and Nike Sabandi not to get into foul trouble, and Blake Hinson not to get into foul trouble. You need a healthy Federico also not getting into foul trouble, and you're going to need Guillermo Diaz-Graham. You're going to need all these guys. But Burton and Cummings are the key. As always. Quite frankly, as always. Let's see. Scrolling in here. Oh, yeah, I was talking about the wide receivers. Will says, we've had 3 wide receiver coaches in 3 years. That doesn't help. You're right. To go from, Chris Beatty to to Brennan Marion to Tyquan Underwood, basically in 3 years. Beatty was here for 2 years, and then Marion for 1 year, and Underwood now is entering his second year. And really, Beatty was only here for 2 years. You had, what was his name? Kevin Sherman before that. And so there has been a lot of turnover, but they've been able to sign guys who appear to be priority targets, and they haven't been able to, get anything out of them. A lot of guys just have not panned out. So I think you're right that yes, they've run into some issues with the turnover at the wide receiver coaching position, but at the same time, they just haven't recruited the position well enough. They haven't recruited the position well enough, and it's showing in how they, the play they've gotten on the field. They got Jordan Addison, they got a Biletnikoff Award winner, they got a 1,000-yard receiver in Jared Wayne, but then there's a huge drop off to whatever they had next, to whoever's like the next best, because you're talking about Taysier Mack after that, and who was a really good player, made a lot of plays for Pitt. There's no question, but there's a pretty big drop off. Maurice French, really nice player, set a Pitt record for most receptions in a season. That's a big drop off, and we'll see if this 2023 recruiting class coming in, is the one that can kind of turn it around. All right. Any other comments here or questions we want to get to? Will Z says, I think Lamar Seymour is going to be the next freshman Addison. Dude is a freak athlete. I think he's going to be really good. I mean, let's not call anybody the next Jordan Addison, even freshman Jordan Addison in 2020, that screwed up COVID year when he missed a couple of games due to contact tracing. Remember when guys would sit out for contact tracing? We're not going to compare anybody to that level. But I do think Lamar Seymour is sort of a sneaky good wide receiver out of Florida who could come in and play a decent amount as a freshman. Some of these freshman receivers are going to have to play. At least one, if not two. And if they're good enough, maybe three. Because it's not like the upperclassmen are so entrenched that they can't get beat. So, we'll see. We'll see if it's Seymour. We'll see if it's Johnson. See who it is. Listen, we will be live after the game on Friday. All right. Assuming it's going to tip off, it's listed at 3:10. Assuming it's going to be around 3:20 or 3:30, we'll probably be live around 5:30, 5:45, somewhere around there for the post-game show right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I don't know the exact time we'll start, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You'll get an alert sent to your phone, so whenever we start, you won't miss it. So do that. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Turn on the notifications. And while you're at it, like this video as well. We appreciate that for sure. I'm looking forward to the post-game show. Last night was a lot of fun. Even though it was a little bit late, we're a little tired today. It was fun doing the post-game show last night, and I look forward to another one on Friday, and then we'll see if, I don't know, maybe we'll have one on Saturday. Or Sunday. Sunday. Darn it. I was thinking Sunday, but I said Saturday. But maybe we'll have one on Sunday. We'll find out soon enough. We're going to do one after every postseason game, like I said. So it'll either be, there'll definitely be one on Friday. And then we'll see if maybe Pitt's able to survive in advance to take on presumably Xavier. Although maybe Kennesaw State. Maybe a 14-3 upset. I did not pick Kennesaw State to beat Xavier in my bracket. But anything could happen. So thanks for tuning in tonight. I appreciate it. Make sure you stay tuned for the morning Pitt. Right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com every day of the week, Monday through Friday. Every morning we have a new video up for you. And then, like I say, we'll be back for a post-game show after the game on Friday. So subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com and you will not miss any of our live streams. Thanks everybody who joined the chat tonight. Thanks to the super chatters. Thanks to everybody who came and hung out tonight. It's been a lot of fun, and we will talk to you tomorrow morning for the morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.